Let's get right into it all with our guest this morning. We've got Mike Ricafort, Chief Economist at the Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, or RCBC. Good morning, Mike. It's been a while. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good morning, Regina. Nice to be back and nice to be interviewed by you again. And good morning to our viewers.
Yeah, I know. It's been years since I spoke to you live on air, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, good to see that all is well with you, but everywhere else, there's so much things in flux at the moment, beginning with the Marcos administration's cabinet. It's been 7 days officially since the cabinet reset, the bold reset, as they called it, was announced. So far, we still only have that handful of names that they said. Economic team, for instance, some changes at DENR and DOE, as well as DFA. What did you make of all of this? And also taking into account that GOCCs are now included in that big cabinet revamp.
Yeah, by the way, Regina, my first live interview was with you. That was
Yeah.
like, that was like 8 years ago.
Yeah, that
And
was
then
a
for,
baptism of fire now. So now we've come full circle.
yeah, that's why it's very memorable. Yeah, and now, well, for our view, no, for the revamp on the cabinet, although the economic team has been maintained, so that would at least give some certainty, some predictability on the future policies for the second half of the administration for the next 3 years. And, this is a signal. Well, these revamps that would include also the GOCCs. That's considered normal. We have seen that in previous administrations, maybe for the past 20, 30, 40, or even longer than that. No? And it's really meant to you to well, as the saying goes, you cannot expect the same results by doing the same things all over again. So maybe it's worth trying a different approach, different mindset, and maybe, of course, it would be a different head, especially for areas that need to be addressed, because the elections reflect clearly the sentiment of the voters. And we have to take note that, these elections, the midterm elections that we just saw, is something different because, almost 60% are the youth, the youngest voters. These are the Gen Zs, the millennials, and at least some surprises compared to the surveys would reveal already the sentiment, and their voices they're becoming a more powerful voice, the young voters, and to reflect what they really wanted. For instance, the gauges for those who won in the Senate, at least going through the top five, what are their advocacy? So this would require, these are the needs of the clamor of the voters, the people. So it's a number, well, first, healthcare related advocacy. Second would be education. Third would be public service that requires to be improved. Maybe fourth would be related to peace and order, and the other one would be prices, especially on agriculture, food security. So these alignments, well, based on the glamour, and of course based on, it's like a performance review. Uh, if the targets fall short, then there may be a need for changes.
Yeah.
So for the better. So yeah, that's why that would be, well, for the next 3 years also. There would be reform measures, especially those that would require approval by the lawmakers, lower house, then the Senate. So anything related to those issues,
Yep.
at the very least, the role of the government is ensuring the rule of law, strong institutions of law, peace and order. That's also one of the reflective of the votes at the Senate. That kind of advocacy, and
Right.
policies, reforms, uh, especially that would require
Yep.
legislation. There's a long list that would make, of course, at the very least, make the economy more conducive to more to for bit for well, ease of doing business, lowered cost of doing business,
Right,
encouraging
right.
more investors,
Yeah,
creating more
yeah.
jobs, and lowering prices.
Right. Mike, I hear all of what you're saying. And actually, survey after survey pre election has shown that the number one concern remains food prices, inflation, cost of living, right? That's still what's important to the vast majority of voters. And we all feel it. There's also healthcare, yes, you're right. There's also education, but by far, jobs and cost of living remains key. So I hear all of that, and that's what everyone else is saying. But the disconnect here is the fact that he retained the whole economic team, right? And this is the same team that approved the PhilHealth fund transfer that's now being challenged at the Supreme Court. This is also the same team that they may not have agreed with the budget that Congress worked on, but nevertheless, the budget passed under their watch, right? Which we all know by this point, President Marcos wasn't happy with that budget to begin with, right? He wasn't happy with the unprogrammed appropriations. So, this is what I'm saying. It's also a conversation point for our other guests in that how do we reconcile these two things then, right? On the one hand, the first team that you retained was the economic team. On the other hand, we know that a big part of the problem is that voters aren't feeling the economic improvements.
Well, those are valid, valid concerns and maybe valid points, Regina, at the very least. You know, that's why it's really a matter of going into the bottom of it. Meaning, say that's why. Well, it may have to go through the specific GOCCs, maybe even at the specific other departments or bureaus, and you know, true. Because yeah, now it's also about managing the country's debt. Going forward, the indicators maybe would suggest already the need to bring down for instance, the debt to GDP ratio has gone up to 62%. So all the more that there should be intensified tax collection measures running after tax cheats and at least maximizing the recurring sources of revenues, those basic things, and at the same time more disciplined spending. There's a pending reform measure on the right sizing of the government to further digitize the government, improve productivity, reduce the cost, and at the very least, when you pay your when tax payments are made at the local level, so there's still gaps. There's a need to further. Well, it should be online already, just like any other transaction right now, rather than being there physically, especially in far away places. So there should be that kind of digital flexibility eventually. That the gaps in infrastructure,
Yeah.
the deliverables, the delays, of course, the right of way issues, the well, that's slowing things down, the permits, the ease of doing business for many investors. It's not just at the national level, but also at the local level.
Yeah.
So, in attracting investors, because we have to compete with the likes of Vietnam. And, those are many other valid concerns. So, it's a delicate balancing act between continuity while at the same time bringing in meaningful improvements and
Yeah.
change amid all those challenges and concerns.
Yeah. On another matter, Mike, just this morning, news broke that a U.S. federal court has blocked the Trump tariffs, deeming them illegal, saying that Trump overstepped his authority when he imposed across-the-board tariffs. So ito na naman, we're off again. This on again and off again tariff policy is, frankly, I'm sure very confusing to a lot of the investors and businessmen. How are you advising your clients at a time like this? What with all this uncertainty?
Well, the common theme, Regina, that we have developed over the past month or two. So it's about external challenges, and there may be opportunities that present themselves. For instance, now, yeah, there's a court now that's challenging the tariffs, the authority of Trump, and they're gonna appeal it. Now, well, at least well, that could signal at least some restraint, so to speak, on Trump's ability to when it comes to deciding on, it's too uncertain, and that's not so good. You cannot even tell by now what would be the real tariffs eventually? We've seen that in China, it fluctuated from, well, it reached a high of 145% tariff. Now it's down to 30%. And the reciprocal tariff with China is just around 34% last April too. And the baseline tariff is 10% for everybody else. So, that would slow things down. Everybody loses when there's a trade war, when there's these protectionist measures. It's gonna, it's unpredictable. Well, the bigger headache now is with the net, well, those who export a lot. No, our neighboring countries are like, well, the major ASEAN countries are 3 to 5 times higher when it comes to merchandise exports
Right.
compared to Philippines.
Yep.
So they have a bigger headache because, how can they plan better? They have so much inventory to sell, so they're gonna dump it elsewhere. So we will enjoy. So what would be the opportunities for us? Global commodities have gone down to the lowest in 3 to 4 years, like oil, natural gas, coal, and even other food commodities like rice is the lowest since November 2021. Of wheat, soybean, corn. Domestically focused companies, well, they would benefit. We're a net importing country. We have a stronger peso now at 55, 60 levels. It's the
Right.
strongest in nearly 14 months. So we're a net importing country. Our trade deficit is 54 billion last year. From 2 years before that, it was at a record of 57 billion. So it's gonna make it cheaper for the
Right.
country to import, and domestically focused companies. There may be some, yes, we need to acknowledge if there's a slowdown in the U.S. economy, slowdown in the world economy, there could be some indirect slowdown in the Philippines, on the Philippine economy. But however, there may be some pockets of resilience because, well, consumer spending is 75% of the
Yeah.
economy. We
Yeah.
don't rely too much on exports, but some form of reality check
Right.
there is that the exporters would be hardest hit because
Right.
our reliance, the total exports of the Philippines, 70%, 17%, the biggest share goes to the US, and we
Yeah.
don't have a
Yeah.
free trade agreement with them.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And that's a great point. Capitalize on this window whilst commodity prices are down and the peso is strong. But we're going to have to leave the conversation there for now, running out of time. But thank you so much for your insights, RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort.